How's it going, guys? Peshcats here, and today I'm going to be showing you guys Triad Primus. Not only a deck profile, but I'm also going to be showing you guys how the deck has evolved over time, not only for me, but for everybody that plays it. I'm going to be showing you guys a lot of the options that you guys have when building a Triad Primus deck, and I'm going to be showing you guys a couple of my own deck lists and how those have changed over time with like finding new options and the restriction list and things like that. But first things first, let's talk about how the deck operates and what it does to win games. So the deck plays very simply, I guess. It's a very simple deck to play. It revolves around these two back row. Having these two cards in your back row gives you a lot of utility. You have a Climax Combo Search, a Global Level Support, you have a 1k to center, and you have a Brainstorm that mills 5, which every time I play against somebody that's never seen this card before, they're like, Brainstorm 5, that's broken. And yeah, it is. But anyways, the deck pretty much revolves around having these two cards in your back row, and all the other cards in your deck are mostly just there to just like be beat sticks. And these two cards are the ones that are really doing most of the work. As for the climaxes, in every Triad Primus deck, you're going to want to play the same 8 climaxes, and those are 4 copies of Triad Primus, which is the stock soul, and 4 copies of Trancing Pulse, which is the pants. And the reason for this is because for your now Brainstorm, she is able to mill 5, but she can only search the deck if you hit one of these 2 climaxes. These are the 8 climaxes you're going to want to run anyway. This stock soul has a double climax combo, and the pants lets you salvage your double climax combo. So outside of that, it is a very simple deck to play. Like the concept is very simple, but at the same time there are a lot of options that you can choose from when you build your deck. So let's go ahead and talk about some of those. So first off, I'm going to move some of these over here. All right, let's begin. So first off, for your level 0, there are 2 cards that I feel are like necessary 4-ofs in this deck. And those are your Brainstorm, Trancing Pulse Now, and Rin Shibuya, which is the Azusa clone. Now has 2 abilities, one of them giving 1k to any Now, Karen, or Rin in your front row center slot, which is quite important for your level 1 game, which is pretty much revolving around being big and just taking control of the board with large fatties. Your level 1 game doesn't have to do anything special because your advantage combo is going to come from your back row, the Karen 1/1. Her other effect is the Brainstorm mill 5, and if you mill either the pants or the stock soul, then you get to search your deck for music characters. And being able to mill 5 is very often the difference between you searching for like 1 card or searching for 2 cards. So it's actually quite important to be able to mill 5. And yes, it's broken. And the other broken card is the Rin Shibuya. On play, discard 1, look at up to 4 cards from the top of your deck for up to 1 blue character. Show it to your opponent and add to your hand, send the rest to the waiting room. The Azusa effect is very powerful, and Rin Shibuya is no different. And it's a perfect fit in this deck. It even gets the 1k buff from the Now Brainstorm. And so these cards definitely like instant 4-ofs in this deck. A card that we can no longer run, pretty much, because it's on the restriction list, is Miria Akagi, the Riki clone. In the past, this was used to search for our back row pieces, so the Now or the Karen. If we didn't have one of them, then you could use Miria to search for the other. If you had both, you can use her to search for just like whatever utility you need. Like let's say you need discard outlet for your climaxes, you can search for a Rin. If you need to search for your climaxes, you can search for this broken card, Kome, which I'll get to in a sec. But Miria was just an all-around good card, and her other ability to give 500 was also very relevant since your climax combo at level 1 is a reverse combo. So she can give you that extra little buff that you need to reverse your opponent's character. And in my deck, I pretty much ran this as a 4 of, and I think that other people that were running like 3 are fine. I think that people that ran 0 are wrong though, and I think that running at least like 2 or 3 of this card, if not 4, was pretty much a necessity for the deck. Next we have Kome. So Kome is another card that I can no longer run because it's on the restriction list, and it is a very, very broken card to be just existing in Weiss Schwarz. On play, look at up to 4 cards from the top of your deck. If you find a climax in those top 4 cards, you may add it to your hand, and if you do, discard a card. So at the worst, it's free milling. You can choose how many you want to mill because it's look up to 4, and at the same time, you don't even have to add the climax to your hand, and you don't have to discard. So like, you could literally just mill for free, and if you don't find the climax you want, then you just milled for free. And if you do find the climax you want, you add it to your hand, discard something you don't need. And Kome was just an absolutely disgusting card. As for how many to run, personally, I went with 1 copy. I didn't think the deck really needed more than 1. If I felt like I needed to find the climax, then I could probably just hold this card until I needed to. Outside of that, I think 2 copies is reasonable. Personally, I ran 1. Next up, we have Project Crone Arisu. This is the double hand filter that was introduced in CG2. So it has 2 abilities: on play, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a music character, add it to your hand and discard a card. And her second effect is when she's played, you can discard a music character to draw a card. So you can activate those 2 effects in either order, assuming you don't like use the top check ability first and like top check a climax, then because that's like worst case scenario, I guess. But you can potentially get a double hand filter. Although one of them you have to discard a music character, so it's not like it's not a discard outlet for like a climax. But the top check ability can potentially be a discard outlet for a climax, assuming your top card isn't an event or another climax. So, but Arisu is a very, very potent hand filter, and is just an all-around good card to put in your deck. We do already have the Rin Shibuya as an Azu Cyclone, but you obviously can run both. That's definitely an option. So now getting on to like the beat stick cards. So we have a few options. These are the 4 that I saw the most. So first up on the far left, we have the Karen. So her effect is if your field is only Karens, Rins, and Nows, she gets a 2k buff, becoming a 4k. So this can be achieved by just playing her by herself, making her a 4k. If you have her with like the Now Brainstorm and you put her on the center slot, she becomes a 5k. Personally, in my opinion, this is one of the weaker options for a beater, because she's still susceptible to Suiciders, and she also like can't move like the Kaede can. Now, obviously, she does have the benefit of having Karen in the name, getting the buff from the Now Brainstorm, make her like 5k. But does that make her worth running? Personally, I don't think so. Especially when you have a lot of really great like utility options, or just other options that aren't Rins, Nows, and Karens that you might want to put onto your field. Stuff like Miria, and that just like immediately turns this card off. So personally, not a fan of this. Next up, we have the Kaede, which is center runner. She gains 1500 if you have 2 or less stock. So this is the card that I like to run as a beater for my Triad Primus decks, because she's flexible. You can move her between 2 slots. Your opponent has to have 2 slots covered if they want to get rid of her. And at 3500 power, a lot of decks can't really do that. So very good card for the early game. Another option that I see a lot is this level 0 Minami. When it's played, you reveal the top card of your deck, and if it's a music character, you may put it under this card as a marker. So the fact that the marker ability is actually optional, you can just top check and then you know what your trigger is. Secondly, if she has a marker underneath her, she gets plus 1500 power and plus 1 level, so she's a 3500 level 1. Very, very good. Allows you to get over your opponent's pesky suiciders without having to lose cards. You can definitely run like both of these cards in the deck. I think they're both reasonable options. And lastly, we have Aki, which is a 0/0 from the first set. If you have one or less other characters, she gets plus 1k and hand encore. So very, very simple ability. Yeah, there's really not much else to say there. It doesn't play well with your opponent's stock or clock suiciders, which are very popular recently. Also bottom deck suiciders for Prisma Elia. But against a regular suicider, she is able to stick around on the board, maybe kill 2 characters. But she doesn't let you maintain card advantage because you have to discard for her hand encore. But if you have like extra level 3s in your hand that you don't need at the time, you can go ahead and pitch those, bring her back. So these are some of the beat stick options that you have for your level 0 game. Like I said before, I prefer the Kaede. Next up, for some of the utility, we have Miku, and an interesting card that I like to run, or I liked to run before, which is Miho. So Miku is a very, very strong card. In my opinion, like this is a card that should be run in like every deck, in just any CG deck, well, except for the yellow one, because you need a full field yellow. But any deck that's not the full yellow deck, I think, should be running this Miku. So her effects are on play, you can discard a climax to salvage a character, salvage a music character. It's very, very good discard outlet, and it doesn't cost you any stock, which is very, very cool. And her other effect is when her attack is canceled, you may send her to stock. So you can like front attack with her, and if her attack is canceled, you send her to stock. And then let's say you were attacking into an open lane, now your opponent loses like a potential on reverse target, and at the same time you gain the stock. It's a very, very cool card. And the other one is Miho. So I ran this for a bit around the time like CG came out, or CG2 came out, and I actually thought it was a pretty good card. I actually liked running it. And so the concept here was not only was it a color fix for red when I started putting like more red cards in my deck, but like let's say like turn 1, I have like a now, and I have no stock, so like I'm obviously not going to use a brainstorm yet. So play the Miho, tap both of these, and get a free stock. So yeah, like so Miho's ability, when she comes into play, you can tap her and another music character to get a blind stock from the top of your deck. Pretty neat for just like a quick stock acceleration. It also allowed me to do like a turn 1 Miria if I wanted to. Like I play now, brainstorm, I play this, I play a Miria, pay 1, clock 1, search my deck for something. It was a pretty cool card for like early game setup. And I don't run the card anymore, but it's definitely a card that I think is worth trying out. Another card for the red fix is the Momoka Suicider. So she's a level 0 Suicider, and her other ability is when your opponent plays a climax, you can send her straight to stock immediately. So this is a very, very nice card. If your opponent leaves their field open, you can just like play a Momoka Suicider, direct attack an open lane, and if you just happen to hit them to level 1, then if they play their on reverse combo, you just send her to stock. You have an extra stock, they don't get their on reverse combo. Very cool card. And definitely a card that you'll want to run, especially for red fix, because there's not a lot of red cards that you can like comfortably run in a TP deck. Now another Suicider option is the Mio stock Suicider from the first set. Now one of my friends, Matt, he runs a TP deck with blue-yellow as opposed to the more popular color combination, which is blue-red, and he runs the Mio stock Suicider in his deck. It's a pretty cool card. I don't personally run it in mine because I'm running blue-red and I need the color fixing for red, but it's definitely a good card. It was overlooked a lot when the first set came out because there were so many like great utility, other utility cards that you could be running. But yeah, with set 2, not much changed. We do have the mono yellow deck, which you can run this in. And like I said before, my friend likes to run the blue-yellow, and so he uses this as his Suicider option instead of the Momoka. And you also have the Miku Suicider. Personally, I think it's inferior to both of these, and I don't have one, but I would put one here if I had it. Now, the next one is a card that's seen pretty often as like a one-of in like Japan builds, and it is the 0-0 Arena. On attack, it has the Shimakaze Kai ability. You choose another one of your music characters, and until the end of the turn, that character gets 500 power times the number of your other music characters. So on a full board, this attacks, you give 2k power to one of your other characters. This is very important for level 1 game because your climax combo is on reverse, so this allows you to give a really fat buff to another character that you want to reverse and get your search off. People typically only ran one copy of this though. For a bit, I ran one copy as well, and I think it's definitely worth running to get that nice buff. So that's all for the level 0s. Now moving on to the level 1s. So the most important level 1 in the deck, obviously the Trancing Pulse Karen. She has 3 abilities. So the first one is she gives a global 1k buff to all copies of the Trancing Pulse Rin, which is the early drop heal. Just anywhere on the board, wherever this Trancing Pulse Rin is, she gets a 1k buff. And her other ability is if you have the Trancing Pulse Now Brainstorm on your field, and this should be your back row pretty much 100% of the time, ideally. If you have the Trancing Pulse Now on the field, then she gains the ability to give all other music characters level times 500. So she's a global level assist. That ends up being plus 2500 buff to the Trancing Pulse Rin. And you get a global 500 buff to all of your level 1s, which is pretty nice. The Trancing Pulse deck typically doesn't run any like level 2s, so not very relevant for level 2 cards. But global level support, very, very good for your early drop level 3s, just level 3s in general, because we're going to be running a lot of those. Her last ability, which is her most important one, is the Climax combo with the Stock Soul. When you play the Stock Soul Climax, you choose one of your other music characters and you give it on reverse search until the end of the turn. So, very, very nice card. Very, very great card for having in your back row. Just the combination of utility that you get from having these two cards in your back row is super, super strong. And it's just a really, really good combination. So now let's get on to like the beaters. So like this is obviously your back row level 1, and she gives an on reverse ability to your other characters. So you're going to want to have characters that are big enough to reverse your opponent's stuff and get the job done. So typically the most common 5 options that you would see are these 5. So first off, we have this 1-0 Now. She's a 1-0-6-5, and she cannot front attack if the character across from her is a higher level. Typically, this is almost never a problem, since a lot of players like to run just a level 1 game and like very few level 2s. And if they decide to play some like early drop healers, you just put Now into the other columns. Like your opponent's like never gonna have 3 early drop healers like ever. The only time that her ability is really a problem is if your opponent has like a level +1 assist. So if you're playing against something like Off-Time Makoto, then that's a pretty bad matchup for this card. And oftentimes you'll find yourself like getting rid of this card trying to dig for some of your other beaters. Another level 1 option is 1-0 Rin. So she's a 5-5 oversize. She gains 1k if you have 3 or more other music characters, making her a 6-5. And if she's reversed in battle, she goes to the bottom of your deck. Personally, I'm not a fan of the of this card as much as this, because I feel like the bottom deck demerit is a little bit worse, and I feel like this demerit of not being able to front entire level is quite easy to play around. So I personally ran more copies of this, and I may or may not have ran more copies of this because this is Now and I like Now more, but yeah, I probably would have ran more copies of this anyway. These are the 2 more popular choices because they also gain the 1k buff from being in the center if you use the Trancing Pulse Now Brainstorm, which you should be. Like, this should always be on your field. But yeah, these gain the 1k buff for being in the center. So if you have both the Karen and the Now in your back row, then either of these two options will be a 7k on the sides and an 8k in the middle. Now, assuming you have 3 or more other characters. As far as just like bursting to get on reverse power, my first star Minami is an option that I sometimes see from like Japanese players. When she's placed from hand to stage, she gains 500 power times the number of your music characters until the end of the turn. So you're going to want to play her last to maximize the buff that she can get, and she does counter self. And on a full board, she will get a plus 25 buff, putting her at 7.5, 8k if you have both back row, and making it very easy for her to reverse most things at level 1. And just a very, very simple beater card. Now, as far as having a beater that likes to stick around on the board, we have this 1/1 Rio, which is a 6k, but if your entire field is blue characters only, she gains an additional 1/5, and she gains Hand Encore. So this is a good way to get rid of some of the like random level 0s that you have in your hand. Let's say you have like some extra Myrias, and this dies, you just like pitch Myria, and then keep this on the board. At 7.5, this card is definitely not the smallest card that you can be playing at level 1, and the ability to Hand Encore it if it does end up dying is pretty neat. A big problem with this deck is that if it gets board wiped at level 1, it has a very hard time keeping up with advantage. So like if your opponent uses like a level 1 Suicider against this, then at least being able to pitch level 0s to keep one fat card on your field is a good option. Speaking of level 0 Suiciders, we also have the 1/0 Konako level 1 Suicider. So that's the only thing it does. But what it does as well is it combos with your Stock Soul Climax combo. Since she can very, very easily reverse your opponent's level 1s, that's pretty much a guaranteed search for your Climax combo. And it also, it's a red card, so it goes into the whole theme of like playing red in your deck with like cards like 3/2 Anzu and the level 0 cards like Momoka and Miku, which I showed you earlier. And yeah, just definitely an option that you might want to play if your local metagame has a lot of very, very big level 1 beaters that are like susceptible to level 1 Suiciders. So like this deck, like if you're playing against other TP decks, then you should definitely consider running the 1/0 Konako as an option for your level 1 game. Now next up is an option that I've only recently added to my own deck, which is the Ronkos. So the Ronkos change into each other. The white one is a 1/0 and she has changed at the start of your climax phase into the black one. When the black one is played on the stage from the waiting room, if you have 2 or more other music characters, she gets plus 25 until the end of the turn, which makes her a 6/5 beater. So this effectively makes her, power-wise, the same size as your 1/0 Rin and 1/0 Now, apart from the center buff from your Now Brainstorm. So like these would be 65s, or these would be 7Ks on the sides, and the black one would also be 7k on the sides as well as in the middle. And at the start of the opponent's draw phase, you can send her to the waiting room to bring out the white one again, and when you do so, the white one gets plus 2500 buff until the end of the turn. So this makes her a 7/5 defense, and if you have the Karen Now back row setup, she becomes an 8k defense, regardless of which lane she's on. So the main difference between running these like these versus running these, if you run these get to be 8k in the center and 7k on the sides at all times. If you're running this, these will be 7k on offense at all times, but they will also be 8k on defense at all times in all lanes. So in exchange for giving up your center 8k, you get 2 potential 8k side lanes, which I think is a pretty fair trade-off. With this deck, you're also able to mill a lot with your Now Brainstorm milling 5, and you have your Rin Azu Cyclone milling 4 every time you use it. So it's very, very easy to get multiple copies of these, not only in your hand, but in your waiting room, so that you can consistently pull off the switch combo and have very, very big level 1 costless beaters. There's another reason why I like to run these two cards, especially after the restriction list came out, which I will get to later. So, like I said earlier, my friend Matt likes to run yellow. So for his level 1 beater, he actually likes to run the level 1 Mika, which is an Ellie clone. She gains 500 power for every other music character you have on your stage. So on a full board, she becomes a 6/5, just like all the other 6/5 beaters that I've shown you guys so far. So very, very simple card. Fits in his deck, obviously, because he runs yellow. Okay, for counters, pretty much everybody runs the Sae counter. It's a just straight up 2k punch. Very, very easy card. Plays into the general theme of this deck's level 1 game, which is to have big beaters and protect those big beaters. So 1k, or 1/0 2k does the job pretty well. You also have the option of running the Mizuki counter, although I pretty much never see this being played. I think it's because it costs 1 stock, but it has a good utility effect of being able to check the top card of your deck and either leave it on the top or the bottom of the deck when you use the counter. So it's definitely a card that could see play, but it just doesn't. Personally, I think just the Sae counter in this type of deck where you focus on the level 1 game is a very important card to have. Lastly, for the level 1s, we have this event, first stage. So you tap a Now, Rin, or Karen, then search your deck for 2 music characters, and then discard a card. So this can be used as a discard outlet for your climax. You can use to search for whatever you need. Search for your late game, search for your mid game, search for whatever you want. Now the main problem with this card is that you have to tap a Now, Rin, or Karen, and this conflicts with your Brainstorm, which is tap 2. So let's say you have like these 2 cards in your back row, and you tap one of them for the event, and now you can't really comfortably use your Brainstorm. So this card kind of awkward to use at times, but it can be helpful to just search out whatever you need from your deck. Now, this is where the Ronkos come into play, actually. This is a big reason why I chose to put the Ronkos in the deck now. With Miria's being taken out, I'm now using this event as a way to search more cards that I need. So the Now is Rest 2, and here's a cool play that you can do with the Now Brainstorm and the event with the Ronkos, specifically with the Ronkos. So what you can do is you can play the event, you tap 1 of your back row, you search your deck for 2 music characters, discard a card, and then now if you still want to use a Brainstorm ability, what you do is you rest the other back row and you rest the Changer. Because at the start of your climax phase, you change into the black one, and the black one comes in to play standing. So you can just use your Changers as like extra Brainstorm taps, and you just don't have to worry about having a lot of characters. You need to tap a lot of characters for like multiple abilities. You don't really have to worry about that as much because you have the Ronkos that can switch off and do their thing. So it definitely helps out with playing the event. Now moving on to the level 2s, fairly common option is the 2/1 anti-level 3 now. So she has a climax combo with the Pants. On attack, she gets 2k power, and if she reverses opponent, you get to draw a card. Now her anti-level 3 ability is not a climax combo. It's when she attacks a level 3 character, level 3 or higher, she gains plus 4,500, and if she reverses that character, she can send it to the bottom of the opponent's deck. So if you combine both abilities' power together, she ends up being 14/5, and if she's in the center slot from the Now Brainstorm, she's also getting an additional 1k buff, making her 15/5, and the Now's global level support is making her 16/5. So she potentially gets extremely huge, and she will also be able to draw a card as well as send your opponent's early drop to the bottom of their deck. So they can't do anything there. They can't like encore or anything. It's a card that I sometimes see as a one of. Personally, I haven't really found space to put this in the deck anymore, so I'm not running it anymore, but it's definitely a good option to look into. Now for counters, first off, let's just throw Mayu out there, because personally I think any CG deck, no matter how budget or expensive it is, I feel that if you're not running at least one copy of the Mayu, you're doing it wrong. I think that's a mistake. Having access to a SAT counter in a set is extremely important, so you're always going to want to have that Mayu, especially since this deck doesn't have any other way to like sack stuff or bounce stuff back into your hands. Like decks like Monogatari, they have like the 0/0 Shinobu or things like that. So Mayu, definitely a very important card to have. As far as other counter options, you have cards like 2/1 Karen. You have this Minami. If you're Matt and you play yellow, he likes to play this event counter. So first let's start with the Karen. So she's a 2/5 backup, and if you have both Triad Primus and Trancing Pulse in your waiting room when you use the counter, she counters for an additional 1500, making her a 4k punch. It's pretty easy to have both climaxes in your waiting room, but at the same time, I don't have room, and I just want to play my Mayu counter. The Minami is a much lesser seen counter. When you use the effect, you mill 3 from the top of your deck, so it can be good to use if you're out of climaxes in your deck and you just want to mill through your stuff. And lastly, we have the Chihiro event counter, which gives 5k if you have a full board. More specifically, it gives 1k times the number of music characters you have on the stage. It's only practical to be using this card if you're running yellow, so if you're not, then probably the best options to pick are, obviously you want the Mayu, and if you want an additional counter, just pick like one of these two. Now moving on to the level 3 game, which is the easiest part of the deck to talk about. First off, we have the 2 Rins. These are staples in every single Triad Primus deck ever. You have your finisher, and you have your early drop heal. This card's $40 for whatever reason. It's still $40. Feels bad, man. So let's talk about the Power Smile Rin first. So it has 3 abilities. First one is on play, draw 2, discard 2, and put the top card of your deck. And you may put the top card of your deck into your stock, so that part is optional. The draw is also optional. You can draw up to 2. I did a whole video about the rulings of this card, which you guys can check out. I'm going to link it down in the description box below. So some pretty complicated stuff on that. But as for the other effects, when you play a climax, any climax, she gets plus 1500 power until the end of the turn. And she has a restand ability. So on attack, if you have the Triad Primus climax in play, she gains the following ability. When one of your other characters attacks, this ability procs up to once per turn, and you'll see why that's relevant if you check out the video down in the description box. When another character attacks, if you have 3 or more other blue characters, you can pay 3, discard 1, restand, and then this can be procced even if she's reversed. So like, let's say you attack with her the first time, your opponent counters, and you attack with this character, she can restand from the reverse state. After which point she will probably just get reversed again. So yeah, there's that. But this is a very, very stupid card, and it's on the restriction list for a good reason. It's a 3/1. It's effectively a 3/1 restander with a climax combo that is also the same climax combo as the 1/1 global level support, which is really, really stupid. So if she reverses something with her effect, you can search for a card from your deck to discard for her restand. So just really, really dumb. Very, very strong card. To proc 3 of these in the same turn, you need to start your turn with 7 stock, and I'll show you guys how that works later on. Let's talk about Trancing Pulse Rin for a sec. So this is your early drop heal. If you have 2 or less climaxes in your waiting room, you can early drop her. If she's in the front row center slot, your opponent cannot use counters against her attack, And she also gains 500 power for every other music character you have on the stage. So this makes her into an 11k if she's in the center slot, but that's before you have your Karen and your Now, which are going to buff her to stupid high numbers. So just because of the Karen's buffs, if you put the Rin on a side column, she becomes 11.5. And if you put her in the center, she's getting both Karen and Now's buffs, as well as her own buff, making her a massive 14.5, and your opponent can't counter. So if you put her in the center slot, your opponent's going to have a very hard time dealing with her because they can't even anti-change punch her. And at the same time, like, let's say they have their own Trancing Pulse Rin in the center slot. You play like some sort of buff card, or you play a 1k1. You get to punch over theirs for free, and they can't even do anything about it. So, Trancing Pulse Rin is just a card that reaches absurdly high numbers. It's a very, very easy early drop condition. Having 2 or less climaxes in this deck is very easy, especially since you can mill through the deck very, very quickly with effects like the Now Brainstorm and your Rin Azu Cyclone. So, very, very, very solid card. Now, Japanese players like to run 4 of the early drop heal and 3 of the restand, and personally, I'm not a fan of that. I like running 4 Power of Smiles and 3 Trancing Pulse Rins. That's just me. I feel like having multiple copies of the Power of Smile Rin, just having as many copies in your deck as possible, just to increase the chance of drawing into multiple copies of them and having them not get stuck in like stock or something like that, is very important, because this card is such a good finisher, and it's so easy to get 3 of them off in one turn that there's really no reason that you shouldn't be running 4 so that you can maximize your chances of drawing into 3 of them for your end game. So those are your staple level 3s. Now, a card that Japan has been running ever since like CG2 came out, they've been running this pretty much ever since Triad Primus decks came on the map. And that is the Anzu early drop heal from the first set. Now, this is like pretty much one of the main reasons that you even try to color fix for red, is to be able to play this. And the early drop condition isn't so ideal because it's having 5 or less deck, so you're going to be like paying out 2 stock right before you refresh your deck, and you're also going to be healing 1, putting a card right back into your deck right before refresh. But this card, it just gives you a lot of flexibility with how you play the deck. So what I mean by that is, let's say like you have like 3 or 4 or 5 climaxes in your waiting room, whatever, and you have this Trancing Pulse Rin, and you can't play it, but you really want to heal. This deck has a lot of very, very easy milling, so you can mill down to that 5 or less deck point, so you can play your Anzu early drop heal. Another really important part about this card is that if you have climaxes that you want to go back into your deck, you can clock them, and then by playing the Anzu, you heal it back into your waiting room right before your refresh. It's just really nice to have flexible options for your early drop heal, since this deck, it's very, very much able to like stabilize at level 2, especially if your level 1 game went badly. So having as many options as possible and being flexible during the level 2 stage of the game by having both the Trancing Pulse Rin and the Anzu is quite important. So as for the Japan ratio, they typically like to run 4 of this, 2 of this, and then 3 of this. Sometimes, occasionally, I'll see a list that runs 4 of the Restander. But those are the level 3s that the Japan community likes to play the most. And as long as I'm here, I might as well bring up Matt again. He likes to play the Kirari instead of like the Anzu because he plays the yellow deck. It's actually pretty interesting because if you combine the Cancel Burn ability with the Restander Rin, you have multiple chances to proc that nice little Cancel Burn, which I think is pretty creative. And I think it's definitely something that is worth trying out. Personally, I haven't tried it out, but I think it's something that, in theory, it definitely works. And yeah, you could definitely try something like that. Now, the last level 3 that we have over here is the Dog. So, being able to hand filter through a lot of your deck, you're able to search for your dog counter for using on your opponent's turn. So it's a heal counter. You play it, you heal 1, you give one of your music characters 2k power, and then you send it to memory. So pretty nice card. Allows you to heal on your opponent's turn, save yourself from death, and if you do the triple Rin restand combo, then you end your turn with 2 stock, which means that you can use 2 of these if for some reason you have that much hand afterwards. Typically, after using like a Rin combo, after using like triple Rin combo, I'll typically only have like 1 card in my hand. I got some, excuse me. And if it's a Hanako, then you can definitely use it. Very rarely will I have like 2 cards in my hand afterwards. So, yeah, getting 2 Hanakos off is fairly rare. But in those times that you can, it's definitely worth running like two copies of the Hanako. So now that I have shown you guys all the options, I'm gonna cut the video here, and I'm gonna start recording a second part where I will show you a few sample deck lists, both mine as well as some like Japan influenced decks, and you guys can check out the options and things like that. So I will go ahead and leave a link down in the description box to part 2, as well as like I'll put an annotation somewhere here so you guys can go check that out. Hope you guys enjoyed part 1, and I will see you guys in part 2.